In the early hours of a humid Tuesday in April, the year 2026, a Russian radar operator sitting in a cramped mobile command post in Crimea watches a nightmare materialize on his liquid crystal display. It is not a single contact. It is what electronic warfare officers call a blossom, a cluster of 30 separate radar returns, skimming low over the surface of the Black Sea, screaming toward the battery he has sworn to protect. This is the Alma's anti-S-400 triumph. In the halls of the Kremlin, it is known as the crown jewel of Russian air defense. In the boardrooms of international arms dealers, it was advertised as the ultimate deterrent, a system that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization once feared would make the skies over Eastern Europe a permanent no-go zone. On paper, the S-400 is a god of the stratosphere. It is designed to track hundreds of targets and kill them before they even see the horizon, but the operator has a fundamental problem. His system was engineered to kill 5th-generation stealth fighters like the F-35 and supersonic cruise missiles like the Tomahawk. These are targets that cost the enemy millions or even tens of millions of dollars. What is currently filling his screen, however, costs less than a used Toyota Corolla. The operator follows his training. He authorizes a launch. 2 massive 4-stage missiles leap into the sky with a sound that can be felt in the marrow of one's bones. A $2.5 million interceptor finds its target, a small plywood drone, and vaporizes it in a spectacular display of kinetic energy. The operator feels a momentary surge of triumph. Then he looks back at the screen. There are 29 contacts left. He only has 12 interceptor tubes remaining in his immediate battery. This is no longer a battle of courage or superior engineering. This is a battle of spreadsheets. This is the moment where the high-tech shield meets the low-tech swarm, and for the S-400, the mathematics are about to turn terminal. To understand why this billion-dollar shield is shattering, we must first strip away the propaganda and understand the mechanical soul of the system. The S-400 is not just a missile launcher. It is an integrated ecosystem consisting of 3 distinct parts. First is the 91N6E Big Bird surveillance radar, which scans the heavens out to 600 kilometers. Second is the 92N6E Gravestone engagement radar. Finally, there are the 5 P-85 launchers themselves. The Gravestone radar is a masterpiece of 20th century physics. It is an X-band phased array system that can track up to 100 targets simultaneously. It is the brain that tells the missiles exactly where to find their prey. But every brain, no matter how sophisticated, has a processing limit. In the world of signal processing, this is known as the saturation threshold. Think of the Gravestone radar like a highly skilled highway patrol officer. He can monitor dozens of cars at once, but he can only physically pull over 1 or 2 at a time. Every radar has a finite number of fire control channels. If the Gravestone system has 12 channels, it can only talk to 12 interceptor missiles at once. If a clever adversary sends 13 drones, that 13th drone is essentially invisible to the defense loop. It is not that the radar cannot see it, it is that the system's digital manager is too overwhelmed to deal with it. Ukraine's adoption of math-based warfare has exploited this bottleneck with surgical cruelty. They did not just send drones, they sent what analysts are calling a digital ghost fleet. By using Western-supplied electronic warfare pods and domestically produced decoys that mimic the radar signature of much larger aircraft, Ukraine began painting the Russian sky with false positives. A decoy drone that costs $50,000 can be programmed to have the radar cross-section of a heavy bomber. To the Big Bird surveillance radar, a plywood frame covered in metallic paint and equipped with a Lundberg lens, a simple device that reflects radar waves with extreme efficiency, looks exactly like a Sukhoi 24 Fencer. The S-400 is forced to treat the $50 reflector with the same urgency as a $5 million jet. Now we must examine the true cost of attrition. This is where the comedy of errors becomes a financial tragedy for the Russian Federation. In standard military doctrine, a commander must fire at least 2 interceptor missiles at every high priority target to ensure a kill probability, or P sub K, of over 95%. Let us look at the ledger for a single engagement. 2 S-400 interceptor missiles cost approximately $5 million combined. The Ukrainian decoy military drone they are targeting costs between $5,000 and $15,000. This creates a cost exchange ratio of roughly 1,000 to 1. If Ukraine launches 20 decoys, they have spent approximately $100,000. If the Russian commander reacts according to his training, he will spend $100 million in ammunition and completely empty his launcher tubes in a single volley. But the math becomes even more lopsided. While the S-400 is busy celebrating its successful interception of plywood and glue, the real killers are moving in the shadows. While the radar is saturated by the swarm, low-flying cruise missiles like the Storm Shadow or ballistic missiles like the ATACMS are launched. These weapons utilize the clutter of the terrain to stay below the radar horizon, or they arrive from a near-vertical ballistic arc once the S-400 has entered its 30-minute reload cycle. This is a critical vulnerability. You cannot simply reload an S-400 like a rifle. It requires a specialized crane vehicle, a complex logistics train, and 30 minutes of being completely stationary and defenseless. Ukraine has turned the S-400 into a single-use shield. Once the tubes are empty, that $600 million battery is no longer a weapon. It is merely a very expensive, very stationary target. The implications of this shift in warfare extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine. For decades, the S-400 was the cornerstone of Russia's global military prestige. Nations like Turkey and India spent billions to acquire it, believing it offered a total defense against modern air power. By systematically dismantling these batteries with low-fidelity technology, Ukraine has effectively devalued Russia's most important military export. They have proven a new variation of an old military maxim: quantity has a quality of its own. But this is not the quantity of Stalin's tanks. It is the quantity of data. Ukraine is utilizing a decentralized battlefield management system called Delta. It is an artificial intelligence-driven map that integrates feeds from satellite imagery, drone reconnaissance, partisan reports on social media, and signals intelligence. When an S-400 battery activates its radar, it is like lighting a flare in a dark basement. The Delta system detects the electronic order of battle instantly. The warfare then becomes a game of geometric whack-a-mole. Ukrainian engineers calculate the exact flight paths to maximize the radar's dead zones. Every radar system has a blind cone directly above the antenna. By using high-altitude balloons or steep-angle missile strikes, Ukraine is hitting the S-400 in its metaphorical occipital lobe, the one place it literally cannot see. This is not just combat, it is the application of physics against an aging architecture. As the losses mounted throughout 2025 and into 2026, the Russian military attempted to adapt. They began pulling Pantsir S-1 systems, short-range point defense platforms, away from protecting major cities and industrial hubs to act as bodyguards for the S-400 batteries. On the surface, this makes sense. The Pantsir is supposed to catch the small, cheap drones so that the S-400 can save its multi-million-dollar missiles for the big threat. It is like hiring a bodyguard to protect your bodyguard. However, Ukraine simply scaled the mathematics of the attack. They began targeting the point defense systems first, using even cheaper FPV drones or specialized anti-radiation missiles that home in on the Pantsir's unique electronic signature. This has led to a psychological phenomenon known as interception burnout. Russian air defense crews are now living in a state of perpetual high alert. They are seeing digital ghosts on their screens 24 hours a day, when every bird, every cloud, and every piece of metallic chaff might be a lethal threat. The human operators begin to make mistakes. We have seen this manifest in tragic ways for the Russian Air Force. There are now multiple documented instances of Russian air defense systems shooting down their own Sukhoi 35 fighter jets. The system is so overwhelmed and the operators are so trigger happy that they can no longer distinguish friend from foe. When your math-based warfare is so effective that the enemy begins subtracting from their own inventory, you have achieved a level of dominance that no traditional kinetic weapon could provide. The shattering of the S-400 is not just a problem for the Kremlin, it is a stark warning to every modern military on the planet, including the nations of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It proves that a billion-dollar shield is only as good as its ability to handle the cheap, the small, and the many. The architecture of attrition has taught us one chilling lesson. In the mid-2020s, you do not need to out-engineer your enemy's most expensive assets. You simply need to ensure that for every dollar they spend to stay safe, you only spend one single penny to make them bleed. The S-400 was designed for a war that no longer exists. It was designed for a sky filled with brave pilots and multi-million-dollar jets flying in predictable formations. It was not ready for a sky filled with autonomous logic and the brutal reality of cost per kill ratios. It was not ready for the math. As we look toward the future, the lessons learned in the fields of Ukraine will rewrite military doctrine for the next 50 years. The era of the high-value centralized target is coming to an end. In its place, a new era of distributed low-cost lethality is rising. Next week, we are going to look at the other side of this strategic coin. We will explore the ghost in the Black Sea. We will analyze how Ukraine's naval drones are not just sinking individual ships, but are effectively deleting the very concept of a blue water navy for every middle power nation on Earth. If you want to understand the future of global conflict before it arrives, ensure you are subscribed to this channel, because in the end, the math never lies. And right now, the math is screaming.